Hello, I'm Andrew Pitkeathly from Nimble Approach. I'm the head of public sector and utilities. Been there the last 2 years. I'm going to speak to you about some project failures I've been involved in, the lessons I've learned over the last 20 odd years or so. Not a Nimble Approach, which is great for you to hear, but I've learned quite a lot from them. So I'll kick off with just a bit of my background. So, as I said, I'm the head of public sector and utilities at Nimble Approach. I've been working in IT and project management for about 20 years, starting off with little projects, then programs, now account management, and several accounts, working across loads of different sectors, so utilities, government, financial services, betting and gaming, ID verification, and that's for product companies. I've worked in for government direct and for some major consultancies on the other side, so quite significant experience of some large programs. So my first case I'm going to talk about is a major phone launch in the UK in 2007. I won't say the names of the companies involved, but you'll probably recognise who it is. So I was a project manager for this identity management company. I was the only one. We had about 120 staff at the time, and we had a large contract with one of the large telecom vendors, which was about 4 at the time. And we authenticated every user going into the stores to buy a phone. So essentially they'd go in, say this system would confirm that they were who they say they were, so they don't walk out in multiple places with multiple phones. And it was prior to them doing a credit check. So a really important part of the process. We'd built a bespoke in-store application, so really solid part of their process. And the customer had the contract for launch of a defining mobile phone in 2007. So it was a massive event for both the company and the phone provider. And we were pretty much a critical part of the sales process to enable them to sell phones on the day. So going back to what we did, we had an application built by a very small company, about 10 people. It was hosted by a very small hosting provider, again, about 10 or 15 people, so pretty small scale. The documentation of the application was weak to non-existent. Essentially, the team that did it weren't used to project management, weren't even used to defining or documenting systems. There were no real non-functional requirements instead of load, and because of the lack of knowledge of project management and methodology, there was no real testing. It was ad hoc, it was non-structured, and there was no load of performance testing that took place. Then on the launch day, there was massive public press interest across the UK. This phone had launched in the States with a massive fanfare, and this was the next biggest launch. What we had done at the company is done the Free Peaks Challenge on the same day. So the majority of staff were out of the office, all senior managers were out, majority of technical people out. We've only a handful of people left in the office. And unfortunately, I'd broken my arm about 2 weeks before, so I was left in the office with about 2 technical contractors, and that was it. Everybody else was gone. So nobody on the office on this massive launch day for the company. What happened was the application fell over and it wasn't coming back. So huge queues started forming outside of the shops. Internet sales weren't available at that point, so it was all in shops. The process to sell a phone went from a few minutes to 50 minutes. So you can quickly imagine the annoyance that they started to raise. The press picked up on the massive queues and it started being on the news. The CEO of the phone manufacturer in the UK called up, wanted to speak to our CEO, who was at the top of a mountain. And then the CEO of the telecoms company rang up as well, wanted to speak to our CEO, who again was at the top of a mountain. So we had to try and get hold of him, which meant one of the fittest guys who'd come down the mountain had to run back up to get the CEO and run him down to speak to them. Eventually, after lots of hot fixes, we managed to get the system live and running, but it was an exceptional, painful day. The volume of phone sales was nowhere near what it, and they had significant adverse publicity. So as I said, we got the application running, albeit very slowly, with multiple untested hot fixes, which obviously you wouldn't do, but given it's not working full stop, it seemed the best thing to do. Next day, everybody was back in the office. Nobody took responsibility. And so I stepped forward, thinking, well, I couldn't make it worse than stopping the launch of a major phone. And in time, we lost the contract with the telecoms company, so really large blue chip company. We lost the contract, and didn't matter what we'd done the day after that, it was lost on that point. The decision we made at director level not to give this work to these people, and it transitioned to somebody else a number of months later. So in terms of the team, I managed to motivate a team of people to make a number of changes to the system. And what it needed was a brand new application and a brand new hosting provider. So everything was wrong with it, just wasn't effective. And a brand new third party to help support and develop it as well. I put a new team in place. So the old team went to the side. It was a new team, really motivated, and it was sort of under the radar previously. They came to the fore, worked really hard, and managed to get a new system which never had any problems again. But by that point, we'd lost the clients anyway. And in terms of what I'll look back on, there were so many issues that you can look back on. So we had the wrong development partner and infrastructure supplier. There was no PMing of previously to when I came on. So lack of architecture, effective testing, no RAID log or use of what risks and issues really were. Lack of governance, no knowledgeable sponsor. The team was naive, so they were a professional services team rather than a project development team. Lack of experience, and then really naive on a massive launch day. 90%, 95% of the people weren't around. And what the biggest thing for me is we sort of moved away from what we were good at. We were good at product. We weren't a bespoke development and hosting provider. And we moved from our core to something we weren't comfortable with. And I think in future, what we'd have done is probably done what we're good at, which is the back-end service, the ID verification, let somebody else do that application development. So that was my major pickups from that, and pretty fundamental and a good learning experience for me about 15 years ago. Second one is where I was leading a big program for a consultancy with a top 10 bank, and we went into a massive dispute. So this bank was one of the first to go online in the late 90s, which is great, but by 2014, 15, the whole digital offering was out of date, needed a complete restructure, very difficult to maintain, very difficult to change. So they spun up a multi-year program. There was 3 top-tier consultancies involved, 2 SMEs, and a large bank team. Very complex program with multiple moving parts. And partway through, the bank decided to become the system integrator rather than one of the consultancies, so took on a dual role of customer and the SI and the system integrator, which meant they had 2 hats on all the time, which they found difficult to maintain through the project. So I took on over as the program manager for one of the consultancies, and just as it did, defects went through the roof, as in they hit the thousands in system test. And what was identified was there was missing business logic throughout the solution. So, for example, age verification didn't exist for loans, setting up credit cards, doing account management. Validation didn't exist throughout the piece. The ball had been dropped between the parties. It wasn't clear who was supposed to pick that up, and as nobody designed it, everybody had come to integration test and moving all these parts together, and these elements just weren't there. Significant additional work was required from all the parties, and it added 9 months to the go live, so quite a significant drop, and in date and a significant number of millions added to the cost, and the benefits being reduced again because you're going live significantly later than planned. So in the short term, the impact was, well, we got into a 9-month dispute with the bank. I was sworn at multiple times, which ain't fun. We held out and didn't settle. Some of the other parties did settle within weeks, and that meant they could concentrate on delivery and relationship with the client, whereas we spent days and nights in dispute meetings preparing to fight and not giving up. We got another £3 million in revenue, which is great news. We won, as in we didn't accept a liability, which is great, and the platform went live smoothly and successfully. However, wasn't all good news. In fact, looking back on it at the time, I thought it was a great success. Now look at it and think it was a massive failure. We lost the contract overall, worth millions and millions of pounds, £30 million. We lost support very early on to the party that had settled early. We lost trust and respect of the client, and it never came back. So the whole contract was lost, despite the fact that we thought we won. So won the battle and definitely lost the war. In terms of the team, they remain motivated. So we played lots of different bits and pieces. So office golf, we did mince pie tasting where everyone went out to different shops and got mince pie and we scored them. We did loads of awards. We let everybody have a safe space. So we went to the client. It was very difficult. But then when we came back to our own office, it was a safe space. So people could shout, scream, let off steam. The consulting, which is great in terms of senior leadership support, magnificently supported the team. Everyone wanted to deliver. It's still a good project to be on, so they still wanted to make it happen, which is good. And only a small group of us was focused on the dispute, which meant 98% of the team was able to focus on delivery, not the dispute. And with the client, we agreed to keep the arguments to the top team only, so keep all the delivery teams from all the parties out of it. And even then, I managed to keep pretty friendly with nearly everybody, apart from one person. And we generally had a catch up before and agreed we would have an argument within the meeting room, but stay friends out of it, which generally worked pretty well. And we all sort of agreed that we were working for our organisations rather than having personal opinions, which worked as well. So in terms of what I've learned there, well, we lost focus on client first. We wanted to win at all costs. There was a group of us who got angry, and that maintained, and we wanted to win. And we should step back and kept our focus on the long-term deal. We should have taken the blame early on, even if we hadn't taken the blame. So put your pride on the shelf, take some blame. But then in terms of the larger program, which wasn't us, there was significant architectural gaps. The bank was acting as the system integrator and the customer, which was really difficult for them to do. Risks across the program weren't recognised and not managed. And maybe it was too big and complex to do as one big program. But having a look at it, they need to replace everything. They couldn't have gone MVP. They needed to replace the whole digital platform. So difficult to break down. So that's a bit about the two project failures. Anything anybody wants to ask, please get in touch. Thank you.